Okay, folks, welcome back to the Hoplite channel. I am your host, Hop. Appreciate you clicking on this video. If you looked at the title, this video is Samurai Lit Primer Part 3. This will be the conclusion to the Samurai Literature Primer series, which I am covering Bushido and the life of the samurai as it was in the era of Japanese feudalism between the 12th and 19th centuries. For this third part of the primer series, I'm going to cover just some basics and some differences that the samurai had with their contemporaries, the ninja. But following on the second part of the primer series, we talked more about what the lifestyle was like for the Japanese samurai in their day and age, how they stacked up in the hierarchy, and as they were considered part of the nobility class. But we look more back to Bushido, and if you could boil down Bushido for the samurai, what would it mean? What would be the essence of the 8 virtues of Bushido, as we were saying? And I was able to kind of, hammer out 3 main categories that Bushido was concerned with. And they are life, death, and honor. Okay. Now, in terms of Bushido, what did life mean? And that was simply to not live life carelessly. Be useful by finding a purpose. So, as a samurai, life was not to be treated lightly. It was not to be all sunshine, games, and fun. It was work. It was discipline. It was honing your skills, honing your body, honing your mind, your spirit for the purposes of serving your daimyo and your shogun and your emperor. You could not live life carelessly and accomplish this goal. So your focus was your martial arts, your commitment to Bushido, and seeing to it that your life was of good purpose, put to good purpose for those services to your lord, to your shogun, to your emperor, to your country. And secondly, death. And to not flee from it, and to welcome an honorable death was considered the crescendo of a life that was lived with care, that was lived with purpose. Now this is where Eastern philosophy, especially in terms of Bushido and a knight's code or a warrior's code, in that the samurai and the Eastern philosophers looked at death and life as 2 sides of the same coin. And you could say in Western philosophy, we treat life and death similarly, but to them, whenever death came, no matter how it came, was a good death if you could say that the instrument of the death or the circumstances of your death was in keeping with the way. And that if they were honorable ways to die, then this was no challenge to shy away from. It was your last challenge. And if you could successfully die, sacrifice yourself for the completion of your training, your life as a samurai, as a bushi, as a warrior, then this was the best you could hope for. And many soldiers of many different cultures have this same mentality that an honorable death is the only death worth having. To die, an old man looking at younger soldiers dying in battle, that was worse than the death those young soldiers would go through. Becoming infirm from sickness or being shot in the back by an arrow after you turned and fled in cowardice. This was the death that was the worst possible conclusion to a samurai's life. But to sacrifice yourself in honor through glorious combat, this was fundamental to the samurai life. And we see that when a samurai couldn't die in battle or through some other means that were considered honorable, the only decent death was seppuku, which we know is ritual suicide. The practice of seppuku in the samurai life was not uncommon, but I don't think it's as common as people think it may have been. It lives on in memory because of the 47 Ronin, and the image of these men fighting into the courtyard where their master had been killed and avenging his death, and then all of them kneeling down and opening their bellies and having a second take their head. That was something that is so foreign to Western culture that it would be inconceivable. Now, suicide, that's not unheard of in Western culture either, but ritual suicide is something definitely unique to the samurai and Japanese culture. The harikiri, which is just belly cutting, that's the jargon term for seppuku. And seppuku was a form of honorable death in the samurai mind if that was his only option. And lastly, honor, which is obligation to your emperor, your shogun, your lord, your country, and your ancestors. This is a big one too. And this is also something that is a cornerstone to Eastern culture, Japanese culture, is that your life should be lived every day as though it was meant to give honor to your ancestors, to those who came before you, to your parents, the grandparents, the great-grandparents, and so on. So the honor and the obligation of this honor was definitely something that the samurai thought deeply of when they considered their ancestors. Because as I said in the second part of the primer, the nobility class of the samurai was hereditary, which meant your father was a samurai, which meant his father was a samurai, and so on. So to disregard life and live it carelessly, or to flee from death and die dishonorably, was of great slight and insult to your ancestors, as well as your emperor, shogun, lord, and country in the immediate sense. But your ancestors, back through history, that was of even graver concern. Okay, and I think a lot of people are familiar with that, but I felt it was worth mentioning that these three things, as we read the source material in Bushido, are always on the samurai's mind in everything he does as a warrior. So let's distinguish the samurai from some of their more well-known counterparts, the ninja. And ninja is actually a Western colloquialism. It doesn't quite have the same usage in Japan as it does in the States or in the West. But what the Japanese referred to the ninja as was Shinobi. And remember, there was a video game, I think, on Sega Genesis called Shinobi. It's actually a pretty cool game. But you were a ninja. And Shinobi just means to hide or steal away. So a Shinobi was one who was hidden or who stole away. And this could accurately describe the ninja because the samurai were employed by daimyo and they were soldiers. I think I mispronounced this word in the second part of the series, so I've corrected it. But the samurai were actual soldiers that were kept on retainer in the employ of lords. The ninja, however, were spies, assassins, and mercenaries. They were kind of the hired help when dirty work had to be done. When honorable work had to be done, the samurai were the ones that were on call. And to the samurai, as we said, honor was everything. But to the ninja, money and success was everything. As long as they were getting paid and as long as they carried out their mission, whatever it was, by whoever hired them, that was all that mattered. So honor didn't quite really jive with the ninja lifestyle. The shinobi were more concerned with money and with success. The samurai thrived in open combat. That was where the samurai warrior was in his element. He was there face to face with you. You were wearing your armor and your helmet. You had your katana, and he had the same. And this was considered honorable combat. The ninja, as the name shinobi implies, hidden, stolen away. They operated in the shadows. They were masters of ambush. If you remember from, I think it was Batman Begins, Ra's al Ghul was training the younger Batman to be a ninja, to be something that could take the world by surprise And that was essentially what the Batman character was. He operated in the shadows. He used the element of surprise and under cover of darkness was where he did most of his work, such as a ninja. Whereas the samurai, they did not look at this as a honorable way to live one's life as a warrior and refused it. The League of Shadows, yeah, definitely the ninja's lifestyle. Samurai operated in the light. So you could say the yin and the yang was the light and the dark. As we said earlier, the samurai were part of the nobility class. They were nobles, although the lowest ranking nobles still noble class. The ninja, however, were probably working class. They were tradesmen. They were fishermen, farmers, but they understood there was money to be made in maybe more nefarious acts like spying, assassination, and other such unsavory deeds where they could make money. So how would they do that, though? Because the samurai, as we see, they had weapons and armor. They were professional soldiers that were trained, allowed to train, and allowed to carry weapons openly, and could fashion and wear their own suits of armor. Ninja, being tradesmen, they were not permitted this. They weren't permitted to carry weapons openly. They weren't permitted to have armor. They weren't permitted to open schools of martial discipline. So they used tools. They used the tools that were available to them as tradesmen as weapons. So you see weapons the ninja would have, like the sai. It's literally a pitchfork used to move bales of hay, or the bow, staff. I mean, it's just kind of it's a stick. It's a long stick that a fisherman could use to push his boat as he fished. The chain with the ball at the end. These were snares and traps that were used by hunters. Any kind of implement that could be fashioned into a weapon, the ninja would make use of, because that was what they were permitted. They were permitted tools. And they self-taught techniques as well. So karate, as it's practiced in Japan, developed as a skill, self-defense for the ninja, because it simply means empty hand. So to practice karate was to practice empty-handed techniques, which would be useful for a ninja, because against a samurai who was permitted weapons, you had to know how to handle yourself if you were unarmed, which could be often, especially if you were in public. But under cover of darkness, the ninja would come out and they would use surprise, stealth, and their tools as weapons to assassinate, spy, or carry out other missions that if they were hired to do so. And there are several accounts that samurai often squared off against the ninja, where perhaps a daimyo of one clan employed the services of a ninja or ninjas to assassinate the daimyo of another clan. And then these ninja would be sent under cover of darkness to ambush or kill feudal lords that were in competition, and the samurai of that daimyo would have to come to his defense. And this happened often, and it's not unlike other sects of assassins in other cultures. If you're familiar with the video game Assassin's Creed, those men under those assassins guilds, they were hired and used for the exact same purposes, to kill, to assassinate, to spy, to steal, using stealth tactics, using asymmetrical warfare, versus the samurai, who were used for direct kinetic warfare. In any event, that's the difference between the samurai and the ninja, and they had to live side by side, and it's thought that perhaps the ninja class of warrior developed because of the mistreatment of the lower class by the nobility. And through excess taxes, through just physical abuse, or being demeaned, the tradesmen, the farmers, the fishermen, the potters, the blacksmith, they did not care for the mistreatment by the nobility class. So they decided to teach themselves in the martial arts and become bushi in their own way, but they chose to be shinobi because they could not operate outside of their caste system unless they could do so under cover of darkness. And I think perhaps many ninja who came from this lower class did so hoping to get even with samurai who may have disrespected them or had abused them for far too long. But it's anyone's guess. There's theories abound that support that, though. All right, folks, I appreciate your attention on this one too. Hopefully this one's kind of brief opposed to the others. But we were going to go more into the literature of the samurai era, literature written by samurai themselves and by people who either knew samurai or were their contemporaries. And we'll begin with that one, actually, with Takuan Soho. We'll begin with his writing, his work, The Unfettered Mind. He wrote this for his friend Yagyu Munenori, who was a famous samurai and swords master of the samurai era. So stand by for samurai literature, Takuan Soho, The Unfettered Mind, and we'll listen to some of the readings of this Zen Buddhist master and how he would advise his friend to seek the way and to keep a clear head about himself as he did so in the martial arts, in his school as he taught, and on the battlefield if that's where he was called to. Okay, once more, appreciate your coming by, and we'll see you in the next one with Takuan Soho. Till then, take it easy.